Hey guys, JTS here, and today I wanted to get into some more Swami Vivekananda, specifically the inspired talks and Jnana Yoga again, to try and explain the Atman, or what had been previously referred to as the Lord. And let's just jump right into it with a very good example that will, I think, help elucidate the subject a little. A round stone with special marks is the emblem of Vishnu, the omnipresent, worshipped in the shrine. Each morning, a priest comes in, bathes the image, clothes it, and puts his own divine spirit into it to make it alive. Then he worships it with flowers and other offerings, waves incense before it, and finally puts it to bed, apologizing to God for worshipping him in that way because of his inability to conceive him without the help of an image or some other material object. Which I think that's a really short and good way of describing what you would call the Lord or God or any of these things. It's a very difficult subject to wrap your head around at first, I think. People often oversimplify it and make it like some sky daddy and all these other ridiculous things, but it only really, I guess, works on people that don't know much themselves. But to get to what I wanted to, the whole reason I'm making this video is a very short parable that I feel like it will be aided by the short paragraph I had read beforehand. They're separated by about 33 pages in the book. Not that it really matters, but they're very different things. Like Inspired Talks was just the different discussions he had brought up on different days. Like each one's dated, and a lot of his texts he recited or were given as lectures, which I find incredible, honestly. But I digress. The whole of the Vedanta philosophy is in this parable. Two birds of golden plumage sat on the same tree, the one above, serene, majestic, immersed in his own glory, the one below, restless and eating the fruits of the tree, now sweet, now bitter. Once the lower bird ate an exceptionally bitter fruit, then he paused and looked up at the majestic bird above. But he soon forgot about the other bird, and went on eating the fruits of the tree as before. Again he ate a bitter fruit, and this time he hopped up a few boughs nearer to the bird at the top. This happened many times, until at last the lower bird came to the place of the upper bird, and lost himself in him. He found, all at once, that there had never been two birds, but that all the time he was the upper bird, serene, majestic, and immersed in his own glory. He goes on to explain that it's realistically just a means of expressing man realizing his divine nature, that he is the Atman, that all that is around him is the Atman, that everything looking back at him is the Atman, he is the Atman, everything is the Atman. And you think it's separate. You think of it as being this separate, almost divine, intangible thing, but you find out that all along, well, that's what you were. That's what this is. And I find it all real interesting. Like, it all, it kind of sounds simple the first time you start hearing about it or looking into it, but the one thing you find pretty quickly is just how complex it really is. And just to help illustrate, what I mean by that, and the distinction between the Atman and the universe is, let's see, I don't know how great this is going to show up, but this is the section I'm going to take some stuff from. This diagram shows, let's see, how it separates, how the absolute becomes the tangible. It goes through time, space, and causation. The absolute becomes the universe, or infinity becomes, something that can be numerated, something that can be numbered. And let's see. Time, space, and causation are the glass through which the absolute is seen, and when it is seen on the lower side, it appears as the universe. What you call motion and causation cannot exist where there is only one. Our will, our desire, and all these things always come after that. The Absolute cannot be presented as will, for will is something changeable and phenomenal, and over the line drawn above time, space, and causation, there is no change, no motion, and it is only below that line that external motion and internal motion, called thoughts, begin. There can be no will on the other side, and will, therefore, cannot be the cause of the universe. Coming nearer, we see in our own bodies that will is not the cause of every movement. I move this chair. My will is the cause of this movement, and this will become manifested as muscular motions at the other end. But the same power that moves the chair is moving the heart, the lungs, and so on. But not through will. Granted that the power is the same, it becomes will only when it rises to the plane of consciousness, and to call it will before it has risen to this plane is a misnomer. This makes for a good deal of confusion in Schopenhauer's philosophy. A stone falls and we ask, why? This question is possible only on the supposition that nothing happens without a cause. I request you to make this very clear in your minds, for whenever we ask why anything happens, we are taking for granted that everything that happens must have a why. That is to say, must have been preceded by something else which acted as the cause. This precedence and succession are what we call the law of causation, which means that everything in the universe is by a turn a cause and an effect. An object is the cause of certain things which come after it, and it is itself the effect of something else which has preceded it. This is called the law of causation, and is a necessary condition of all our thinking. We believe that every particle in the universe, whatever it be, is related to every other particle. Now that relates big to karma yoga, which basically is just working through different things, and the whole point of that is to essentially use your own works to destroy your chain, the chain that binds you to causation. They kind of look at like causation, like I was saying, causation, like a chain of causation. How one effect becomes how a cause is also an effect, and how what I basically just said. And it kind of like creates this big chain. And another party mentions, if I remember it correctly, that positive karma or good karma has a golden chain, and negative or bad karma, or you want to call it, has, I think, an iron chain. It's either iron or lead. I can't remember which. It doesn't really matter for what I'm trying to talk about at the moment. It's just really, I'd rather, I guess, admit I don't know offhand than lie and lead someone down in the wrong direction. I think that's an important thing, and I'd rather, I guess, look dumb at one point than make someone else look dumb at another, I guess. I can handle that. My ego is not at a point where I need everyone to think I know everything, because I certainly do not, and I likely never will. You can certainly try, but you can only learn so much in a day. But that's kind of another illustration of the whole thing, of the absolute in the universe. The parable of the golden bird is basically going up through those, if you kind of see it in a way. And it's kind of also like he starts here and he makes his way all the way up here. Like each time he eats one of those bitter fruits, he looks at it and finds another section and another section until he's finally all the way at the root of it all, the Atma. And I think if perhaps we could learn, all of us, to, I'm not even saying embrace this idea of the Atman, or you could, it's basically the same as the Hermetic, like the all, and I find that to be not coincidental at all. I'd imagine that they either both come from, some similar root belief system, or one directly stems from the other in some way. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly it went down. It's just the all and the way the absolute is talked about are identical. It's even in basically the same language, which I found pretty interesting. You'll find that in a lot of different, when you start investigating a lot of ancient texts and belief systems, you'll notice these little links, or however you want to put it, even go back to the chain of causation, because find these links to other belief systems that you never really would have expected, because well, you find that the things people most often talk about are usually not the most important things when it comes to religions and understanding them. It's just often, well, it's a case of a little knowledge being a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not that Pyrean spring. For That's a great Pope quote that I just butchered, but the idea is basically that when you learn a little bit about something, you overestimate your knowledge of that subject, but you're really willing to talk about it. You really want to get that knowledge out there for whatever reason, just because you're excited that something new you learned, or you want to show off, whatever the case. And it's usually the only other people that will be that as excited to talk about that subject as you, or people that actually have a good understanding of it. But those two will never have a fun conversation unless, well, they're both capable of being understanding human beings. And I think one reason why I do really like the Vedantic view, and especially the view of each of us being the Atman, everything being the Atman, is, well, it falls in line with something I had come to know during my Gnosis experience. It was literally direct knowledge of the Atman was one of the three things I gained from that experience. And I never read any of this stuff back then, and reading it now, it was kind of mind-blowing. It was like, wait, I've known this for years. Like, I just kind of, I guess, took it for granted. And I didn't really think too much about it. It was just sort of, knowledge, something I knew, not something I could ever prove, or mind you, but, it's something I know. And I feel like that's one of the big things with this sort of subject, is that you have nothing to prove to anyone except yourself. That's it. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, because they're not the one, that you really have anything to prove to. They might want you to think so. In fact, they might convince you so, but they never will be. They never, ever will be. And consequently, that's part of why none of us can save the world. I mean, certainly, I think it would be good if we could go on a more positive track for all of man, instead of this negative one where we're constantly trying to find one section of society to screw over so that another section of society can get some sort of perk or feel superior. I think we need to leave all this sort of shit behind. It seems, what's the word, toxic? And I don't think it matters which way you look at it. If you want to take the traditional sense and say one group is bad, or take the new sense and say another group is bad, I think it's all bad. I think that we need to stop trying to act like it's only one group that has these negative qualities that none of us like. There are negative qualities in mankind that, if nurtured and nourished, are just going to keep sprouting up. And nobody likes these qualities, and anything like it's just one group is not going to change anything. And that's a big part of why I'm hoping that someday maybe we'll grow beyond this ignorance and actually create something that can work. But as for now, we're nowhere near that. We need to get beyond this place we're at of ignorance and dogma, and create a new dogma that serves